Right, Rob and I are going to try and tag team today, so this could be interesting against the clock. Right, so I'm Giles from Jobtrain Solutions. We deliver talent acquisition and recruitment solutions to many leading employers, including mydentist, and here to introduce is Rob.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Rob Devlin. I'm Head of Resourcing at mydentist. We are Europe's largest private healthcare provider in the dentistry industry. We've got loads of challenges around resourcing, both in terms of our employer brand perception and scarcity of talent. So therefore, candidate experience is really, really important for us. What that means, as far as I'm concerned, in resourcing is basically everything and anything which is a representation of your employer brand, whether that's a conversation that's had between a resourcer or somebody in the business, or an email from one of our computer systems.
So why is candidate experience so important? Well, 93% of CEOs believe their organisation needs to fundamentally change its approach to resourcing. 83% of talent say a negative interview experience can change their mind about a role or company they once liked.
Yeah, and I think those interactions can be pretty much anything. So it's not just an advert that you see on the careers website. It's the email that you get from the ATS. It's the follow-on conversation that you have with a member of the recruitment team. It's the quality of the interview that you have once you meet one of the hiring managers internally. So I think it's really, really important to understand what each step of that employer brand experience is. We try and make it as simple as possible. So people want things to be dead quick and dead easy. Provides some complexities for us in a clinical space because typically the industry requires lots of information. So we're really focused and obsessed with simplifying processes and making things as easy as possible.
So yeah, communicate your employer brand to everybody. You see, you can get the first 4 steps right, but if the 5th fails, like the interview, then candidates are only ever going to remember that. So think about maybe creating brand ambassadors within your organisation. Perhaps they can work to improve the process, not just as recruiters, but also they can communicate this to your hiring managers as well.
And then I think once you've identified those touch points, you're going to use your ambassadors really to bring that to life. So we made this really simple by just starting off with a really simple map. What's each step on that candidate journey, and what is the standard of experience that we want to provide? I think the ATS is obviously really, really important. It is basically your shop window. So depending on how frequently you keep that up to date and refresh will affect the level and quality of applications that you get in. Like I said earlier, trying to make it as simple as possible. So really looking to reduce the amount of clicks take to apply and to get through the process is going to improve experience.
Think about your social media channels. Your best candidates will trawl social media for information and insight. Think about creating and manage a brand presence wherever your candidates may be. And also have a plan in place to manage your reputation as well, to respond to comments and feedback. You might think this is a little bit funny, especially coming from an ATS provider, but too many applicant tracking systems form a barrier. Think very carefully about the number of clicks and make sure there are no barriers in place. Think about your brand and the fact the ATS should absolutely represent that brand as well. And make sure it's made for mobile, not just responsive in design.
Yeah, so again, just building on the previous presentation, I think spot on. It's about how do you bring those propositions to life through really, really creative advertising. Using tech such as videos and video interviews, we find has a massively positive impact on not just the number and quality of applications, but the conversion through the process. And particularly with millennials or younger types of applicants, the expectation is already there that you're doing it. So if you're not doing it at the moment, you are going to be left behind. So I think to make it all happen, we put some pretty simple internal SLAs together, really just to help us keep a handle on what is or isn't working from an attraction and employer brand point of view. What we find then is that actually the quality of applicants goes up. The application process itself is something that I think gets missed a lot in candidate experience. As well as simplifying it, we look at using technologies such as Launchpad or other interactive selection tools, which we find can really represent the employer brand in a much more interactive way. So I think email, text communication, a lot of organisations don't pay a lot of attention to this. You see a lot of sort of standard template emails, but it's a really important part of how you communicate. We did some really interesting work segmenting the different audiences we communicate with. So for example, clinical people require a much different tone of voice than somebody who may be applying for a job on reception. So it's about really, really sort of segmenting those messages down. And equally, as part of the interviews, really thinking about the language that you're using according to the different types of people and having some really clear guidelines in place to make sure that you're delivering that really, really well.
Offer onboarding, a little nod to Love Boat here for those of you that are of a certain age. When you consider onboarding, make it engaging, make it exciting. There's a very high percentage of candidates that are lost through the onboarding process. So think about using chat so you can engage directly with candidates. Use video, use emails, and get the hiring manager to actually call the candidate as well.
And then obviously feedback. So we get feedback from both our hiring manager population and also from our applicants in terms of the candidate experience and how that's affecting employer brand. We provide a lot of tools to our internal hiring manager population as well to make sure they understand how to articulate the brand. And we learned the hard way about assuming that everybody internally is automatically a brand ambassador, which rarely they are.
Yeah, give feedback. Ultimately, you can't improve what you don't measure. So think about candidate calls, use some hard measures, things like the NPS survey, and report on it. Find out where your drop-offs are in the process. Find out the reasons and respond.
Yeah, and again, really just sort of building on the importance of measuring and responding. Make sure all your websites have got all the appropriate tracking on there. Make sure your ATS has got all the appropriate tracking on there. And make sure you're squeezing as much as possible out of your BI, both in terms of the hard measures, but also the qualitative stuff around what your candidates are actually thinking about their experience.
Obviously, we're pretty passionate about this, so if you have any questions at all, then do come and chat with us afterwards. Many thanks.